Welcome to Mission Control Focused Learners. I'm your exam flight director, and today we're running a high-stakes explainer styled as a full-on flight simulation for one of the absolute most critical missions in your academic syllabus. We're talking about Cambridge AS Level Afrikaans, specifically paper 8679, and our target objective for today's flight, the use of cue cards and illustrative material. Now I want you to completely change how you look at this. Think of your exam paper as a highly complex flight system. It requires absolute perfect execution to land safely. You are the pilot in command, and I'm sitting right here in mission control to decode the examiner's brain for you so you can navigate this paper without a single systemic breakdown. We're going to treat this as an elite training program, so strap in, check your pre-launch telemetry, and let's get ready for launch.
Okay, let's dive right into this, because right out of the gate, our radar is flashing a massive turbulence warning. This data comes straight from the principal examiner reports, and they explicitly state that this section is one of the most misunderstood areas in the entire Afrikaans language syllabus, literally across the board. If you've ever felt that spike of anxiety looking at a super complex cue card or some incredibly dense piece of illustrative material, and you just thought to yourself, what on earth do they actually want from me here? Well, you are completely validated. It is a notoriously tricky section. It's an area where so many candidates veer way off course. They end up burning precious time and mental fuel on completely the wrong calculations. But look, that stops today. We're fixing your trajectory right now.
So here is our authorized flight plan for this simulation. We're hitting 5 checkpoints: the core principles, the technical methodology, examiner warnings, critical evaluation, and finally, your exam attack strategy.
Starting with Section 1, the core principles, which is the foundational theoretical architecture of your exam.
Now, what's incredibly fascinating is when we pull this exact piece of telemetry from the flight recorders of past high-scoring students. The principal examiner report says, candidates referencing cross-topic connections achieve significantly higher marks. This isn't just a suggestion, you guys. This is a proven high-scoring technique. The examiners absolutely do not want you looking at a cue card in a vacuum, as if it has nothing to do with the rest of the course. They want you to see the interlocking systems. If you can logically link the illustrative material in front of you to other syllabus areas in your Afrikaans studies, you are showing them that you understand the entire operational matrix. You're not just pressing one isolated button on the dashboard. You actually know how the whole plane flies. To keep your craft on the optimal flight path, you have to hit 3 critical navigation beacons. These are your assessment objectives: knowledge and understanding, systematic analysis, and evidence-based evaluation. Now, these aren't just fancy words. These 3 distinct cognitive domains are exactly what the examiners are hunting for when their radar scans your written paper. Think about it. If you only show knowledge, like you just repeat what the cue card says, but you completely fail to analyze that data systematically, your trajectory is going to fall way short of the runway. You absolutely need all 3 of these beacons engaged to clear orbit and secure top marks.
Moving into Section 2, the technical methodology, this is all about executing the actual process. All right, I need you to lock on to this next concept, because it is your backup parachute. It's called the method mark strategy. To explain this, let's track 2 virtual candidates on our simulator right now. We'll call them Pilot Alex and Pilot Sam. Now, Pilot Alex is incredibly smart, but Alex tends to overcomplicate data calculations, burning way too much time and fuel in the exam. Pilot Sam, on the other hand, is fast, super fast. But Sam tends to ignore structural boundary constraints, which risks a total systemic breakdown. So let's say Pilot Alex is doing a really complex interpretation of a data table on an Afrikaans cue card. Alex is doing great, but under the pressure of the exam, Alex's final written conclusion ends up being slightly off due to a minor misinterpretation right at the end. However, because Alex rigorously showed the step-by-step working in the logical process used to analyze the text, the examiner awards method marks. Even if the final destination was slightly missed, clearly showing your flight path earns you critical points. So the takeaway here: never ever just write down a final answer without explicitly showing the system parameters and the logic you used to get there. Now let's look at Pilot Sam. Remember, Sam is fast but often ignores structural formatting. This table right here is your pre-flight checklist, and skipping it is Sam's biggest weakness. The presentation of information on your exam follows strict conventions that professionals use, and frankly, that examiners demand. First, proper headings. They must be clear and completely relevant. If a dial isn't labeled, you don't know what you're adjusting, right? Second, correct terminology. You literally have to use syllabus-specific Afrikaans vocabulary, not everyday colloquial slang. Prove you know the technical language.
Third, appropriate formats. You need to structure your extracted data correctly, whether it's bullet points or a structured paragraph. And finally, clear annotation. If you're referencing illustrative material, label it precisely. Refer to Figure 1 or Graph B. If you skip this presentation checklist, your system crashes before it even leaves the launchpad.
Let's transition into Section 3, Examiner Warnings. This is where we learn how to navigate the most dangerous pitfalls. I need you to pay very, very close attention to this specific data. We pulled this straight from the black box flight recorders of past exams. According to the principal examiner reports, these are the top 3 mistakes that cause students to lose altitude. Number 1, confusing cause and effect. Number 2, forgetting to check format and presentation, which we just talked about with Pilot Sam. And number 3, providing answers that are not specific to the given context of the cue card. But before we analyze this debris field any further and really break down that first fatal mistake, I'm going to pause the simulation for a second. If you want to optimize your flight path and secure maximum marks across all your subjects, I need you to fire your secondary boosters right now. Hit subscribe to Ace the Exams at the handle @AceTheExams and turn on all your notifications so you never miss a mission update. Okay, secondary boosters engaged, simulation resuming. Let's break down that first major mistake. Confusing cause and effect. This is huge. On the left, we have the cause. That is the trigger, the initial spark, or the reason an event happens. On the right, we have the effect, the outcome, the results, or the explosion. Failing to distinguish between these two completely ruins an analytical response. Think about it like this. If the illustrative material provides a text or a graph showing that a specific new rule was implemented in a school, and subsequently student attendance dropped, the new rule is the cause. The drop in attendance is the effect. If you swap those around in your written Afrikaans answer, your logic is fundamentally inverted. You're basically telling the examiner that the drop in attendance caused the new rule to be implemented in the past. It makes no sense, and the examiner literally has to abort your score for that section. Keep your triggers and your outcomes strictly separated. Moving on to Section 4, Mastering Critical Evaluation. This is all about thinking exactly like a top score. Let's see how all this theory builds into a foolproof, actionable system. This is the Deconstruct, Solve, Evaluate framework. Step 1, you identify the given information straight from the cue cards. Step 2, you break it down into logical steps. Step 3, you solve it systematically. Step 4, you check your interpretation for reasonableness. Does this actually make sense in the real world? And Step 5, you make justified recommendations or conclusions. Now, imagine our virtual pilots, Alex and Sam, are cruising along, but suddenly they encounter a critical roadblock mid-paragraph. Their evidence links are failing and their argument is losing pressure. As your flight director, I'm overriding the console right now to inject a structural template to save their trajectory. It's called PEAL, Point, Evidence, Evaluation, Link. When you're making those justified recommendations in Step 5, you have to make your point clearly, back it up with hard evidence from the illustrative material, evaluate the strength of that evidence, and then link it right back to the core question. That is exactly how you save a failing trajectory and pull your grade back up. Okay, I'm putting a live radar challenge on your screen right now. Let's call this a debris detection scenario regarding similarities and differences. I want you to imagine a 60-second visual countdown clock ticking on your console. You're looking at 2 different cue cards, and the exam asks for a comparative analysis. A standard, low-scoring student might just list distinct facts side by side. Card A says this, card B says that. Listen to me, that is debris. That falls way below compliance standards. True comparative analysis requires explicit evidence for both sides, joined by comparative connectives and Afrikaans. You must weigh the contrasting evidence to determine its relative importance. You can't just say, this one is formal and this one is informal. You must say, while text A uses formal terminology to establish authority, text B relies on informal colloquialisms to build rapport, which is a significant difference because, do you see the difference there? That is how you clear the debris. If you truly want to be a Top Gun scorer in this subject, these are the exact characteristics you need to be flashing on the examiner's radar. These are evaluative thinking traits. First, you question the assumptions presented in the texts. You don't just take the illustrative material at face value. Second, you consider different perspectives. What if the data table provided is biased? What if it's only showing one side of the story? And crucially, the third point, you justify every single decision with hard, undeniable evidence extracted straight from the source material. You never guess. You prove. And that brings us to Section 5, your exam attack strategy. We are bringing all of this intel together for final approach. Here is your exact step-by-step landing sequence. We call it the 6-step exam protocol. 1. Deconstruct the command keywords in the actual question. Treat those keywords as your absolute system parameters. 2. Extract only the relevant data from the cue cards. Ignore the noise. 3. Select your analytical framework, like that deconstruct, solve, evaluate model we just covered, or the Peel method. 4. Execute your answer with clear notation. Remember Pilot Alex and those method marks? Show you're working. 5. Verify your results. Does your conclusion actually answer the specific question asked? And 6. Present your final answer using the correct syllabus-specific Afrikaans terminology. Treating the exam paper as a systematic process like this guarantees that you hit every single assessment objective without fail. Now, to make absolutely sure that you don't blank out when the G-force hits during the actual exam, I'm giving you a system override code, a memory hack. Look closely at those 6 steps we just covered. Deconstruct, extract, select, execute, verify, present. DESEVP. I want you to create a custom mnemonic, a catchy phrase using the first letters of those key terms. Doing this right now will lock this sequence into your brain permanently, so when you sit down in that exam hall, the protocol is purely automatic. Well, Pilot Alex and Pilot Sam have just confirmed a successful full-mark touchdown sequence on our simulator today, and now it is completely your turn. What is your custom mnemonic for acing this exact section? I want you to drop your memory hack in the comments down below, along with your specific subject and tier. Remember, the difference between a pretty good candidate and an absolutely exceptional one isn't just knowing the facts. It's proving to the examiner that you can expertly navigate the complex systems that hold those facts together. To keep all your future flight paths perfectly optimized, make sure you subscribe to Ace the Exams at @AceTheExams. Trust your systems, rigorously tackle those past papers, and I will see you back in Mission Control for the next explainer.